What's up, you guys? Happy NHL training camp opening day for the Montreal Canadiens, and they have a new player to add to that roster. Yes, number 70, Tanner Pearson, assuming he brings that number over from Vancouver. Veteran forward, Stanley Cup winner, left-hand shot forward, Tanner Pearson of Kitchener, Ontario, not too far from the Niagara region, I might add, just for fun, is coming over to the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for Casey DeSmith, and the Canadiens also acquire a third-round pick in the process. Now, in the time that you've actually spent I told you guys, I encourage you guys because I support the local Habs YouTube community and the hockey community here, but you've probably done your research on this player, and so have I, actually. And what I learned actually just even last night from Elliot Friedman in a clip about Tanner Pearson, the biggest concern about him was whether he could actually continue his playing career last year, because he had a severe hand injury, and that resulted in several surgeries that had to get him to the point where he actually is able to play again. He's healthy. And I actually found a great quote from Brock Besser, who actually just saw Tanner Pearson practicing recently. Quote, "I went and watched him skate the other day, and I saw him shoot right away, and it got me fired up," Besser said with a smile. Continuing the quote from Besser, "Just for one of your buddies to go through something like that and him missing the whole season, it's hard. He's a guy that was really important to our team last year, and we needed him, but I'm just so happy for him and happy that he's back out here and happy that it wasn't worse." So yes, this trade does come with some risk for the Montreal Canadiens, and we should mention the cap hit that will be paid by the Montreal Canadiens for this season for Tanner Pearson. It will be a hit of $3.25 million for the 23-24 season, in which he then becomes an unrestricted free agent next summer in 2024. Pearson's 31 years old, basically one of the second or third oldest guys on the team, same age as Brendan Gallagher, only Jake Allen. And who else is it on forward that's actually older than Tanner Pearson? Actually, it's defenseman David Savard. So he's one of the veteran guys on this forward group. And I don't think it hurts, except for the fact that it's going to hurt maybe the internal competition at training camp for the Montreal Canadiens forward group, talking about guys like Mike Pizzetta, maybe Yoel Armia, although Armia is a right winger, but we all know that Armia's days in Montreal are numbered. Does it hurt the chances of guys who had a decent rookie camp and hopefully will also have a very good main training camp? Guys like Emil Heineman, Joshua Waugh looking to, surprise and get a Canadiens roster spot. I don't think there's any harm whatsoever. And those guys simply going to Laval, which I think is expected for guys like Joshua Waugh, who some of you guys really felt like had one of the better rookie showings in the showcase over the weekend, the rookie challenge. But now is really where you got to show what you got, because now you're at main training camp competing with all the other guys. Now, in terms of what Tanner Pearson can bring to the lineup, we saw last year how there was what we call dead weight in the lineup with guys like Jonathan Drouin, Evgeny Dadonov, and Denis Gurianov, who I said was a steal at the time for Evgeny Dadonov. But regardless, is Tanner Pearson really going to be able to come in and be a roster guy immediately right away for the Montreal Canadiens? I think the answer is absolutely yes. It's very clear when you do your research, not just the highlights. If you go to his highlights on YouTube, you're going to see him pot a bunch of empty net goals in the 1920 season. So nothing to grab there, obviously. But I will say that, gathering not just by the Brock Besser quote, but just going by the highlights that I've seen and the pedigree that he comes from, actually having some pretty decent Stanley Cup playoff experience, which does not hurt, including lifting the cup in 2014 with the LA Kings. But besides the obvious there, I think that this guy is going to be a really good locker room guy. He's a teammate that's going to make the room better, going to make the room tighter. You add to a veteran presence like Sean Monahan and Josh Anderson, Brendan Gallagher. Now you bring in Tanner Pearson. And I think this is a good way to ease in the younger guys in the coming years to this Habs lineup. And now you got some forward depth. You got some depth with Tanner Pearson, because, again, we also lost Rem Pitlick last season as well. So Mike Hoffman, hallelujah. We lost a lot of forwards last year, about 5 of them, like I mentioned. And now's the time where you have to shore up the forward depth, because as much as getting the new medical staff in for the Canadiens is key and going to help eliminate more injuries, hopefully, and I wouldn't say eliminate, but just to dissipate more injuries, and especially for a guy like Tanner Pearson, who really can't afford many more injuries in his career, this is a good time to add forward depth to shore up the top 9. I would think I can see Pearson, sliding into the third line or maybe even the fourth line with the Canadiens. Who knows? But I think, as much as Raphael Harvey-Pinard, I think, is a lock for the Canadiens roster this season, I think there could be some wiggle room here with inserting or taking out Michael Pezzetta or Yoel Armia, I think there's definitely room for Pearson in this lineup. It's also noteworthy to mention that Tanner Pearson can play some power play minutes too. So I can definitely see him going on to the PP2 unit, the second power play unit, to help shore that up. And like I mentioned, contribute offensively, where he has done a decent job of that throughout his career. If you look at the numbers again, in 590 games played in his NHL career, 133 goals, 139 assists for 272 points in those 590 games. And like I mentioned, also 51 career playoff games played, 9 goals, 14 assists, 23 points in those 51 games. Last season was not a great one for Pearson. As we know, it ended relatively short. Pearson was only able to play in 14 NHL games last season with the Canucks, 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points in those 14 games. So, he's looking to bounce back and redeem himself. It's a good situation for him with a fresh start, and it's a good situation for Vancouver getting the goaltender that they needed. So definitely a win-win on both sides of this deal. As pointed out by Arpon Basu here, the Canadiens definitely have some good draft capital in order to acquire players in the future, not necessarily through free agency, because as we know, that could be a bit of a tougher market still, no matter where the Canadiens are in the rebuild. So this just helps the Canadiens acquire more draft capital in order to be able to make a trade for another top 6 forward, which we definitely still need by the looks of it going forward through the rebuild. This is just going to help that possibility of a trade being made by Kent Hughes at that time, when the timing is right, in 2024, 2025, when the Canadiens again have 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, 2 third-round picks, and 2 fourth-round picks in the 2025 draft. He's a teammate that was beloved in Vancouver, and that cannot hurt the Canadiens trying to take the next step forward in this rebuild this season. I don't know what the plan will be after that, but it certainly seems like Tanner Pearson will be a very serviceable player potentially for a decent chunk of games if he stays healthy this season for the Habs. Pearson also plays with some grit. He plays with a little bit of snarl. He just seems to have that strong compete. He's not afraid to go to the front of the net. He's maybe he kind of reminds me of how Brendan Gallagher plays. He's always in front of the net, trying to tip pucks in, contribute offensively, of course, but he also can fight, although we do not want to see him drop the gloves, I don't think, if at all this year, maybe just not much at all, because all the fights that I watched him in were actually relatively short as well. The guy's not necessarily a heavyweight by any means, but I do think that given his hand situation, the surgery he's coming off of, even if it was his left hand, which it was, regardless, I just don't want to see the guy get hurt, and hopefully he can just chip in. I think he's going to be a good addition here. The Canucks absolutely needed to shore up their goaltending depth, so this works out perfect with Casey DeSmith heading over there. And I like the fact that, like I mentioned, Brock Besser had some really good things to say about Tanner Pearson and the fact that he's a solid teammate, a guy that the guys love having around. So I just like that idea going forward into this season where, a lot of people are saying how small the forward group is in the Montreal Canadiens and even their prospects and all that stuff. Well, this guy is not small by any stretch, and he doesn't play like it either. So I look forward to seeing how he does this season and how he can help us stay competitive. Let's bring in more guys that are going to help the Canadiens stay competitive for as long as possible this season. That is the goal. Thanks for watching, you guys. Appreciate the support. It is officially underway. The training camp for the Montreal Canadiens has begun, and it's time to see what these Canadiens become, see what they are for this season. It's going to be a good couple of weeks. I've got preseason tickets to the Ottawa Senators on September 27th, which I have no idea what I'm going to do with because I'm probably not going, but maybe we'll see if any of you guys are interested in that. But anyway, that being said, we'll see you guys soon. Go Habs, go. Let's see where the season takes us.